This thing working. Oh, wait, hang on. Let's get everything up and running here. What is happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic, what is this, Tuesday? Freaking summer day, man. It is hot as hell, muggy. Oh my goodness. Definitely not drag racing weather, I'll tell you that for sure. Hey, Mopar Zen. What's up, my brother? How's my new car doing? T-Mopar Zen. What up, B? What up, man? Oh, man. So, at any rate, hope everybody's having a fantastic kickoff to your week. I am, so I'm hoping y'all are. Really not a whole lot to chat about. So, waiting to get the idler pulleys in. We're going to go with an upgraded set of idlers for this thing. Really for no other reason than, well, the pulleys on this thing kind of look like crap. So, one, it's time to, put something underneath the hood of this thing that actually looks decent. But two, looking to save that reciprocating weight. Going to save about 2.5 pounds off of the nose of the car, basically. Big deal. But thing is we're taking a piece of metal and we're accelerating it from, say, 1,500 RPM to 6,000 RPM. That would be one thing. But in this case, you're accelerating this thing from, say, 3,000 RPM to 14,000 RPM. So, yeah, you figure if you got to try to spool up 2.5 pounds worth of whatever to 14,000 RPM when this thing hits a shift point, yeah, I would say that would probably be robbing a little bit of power, but more to the point, it's just extra load that, well, I don't want to have spinning around in there from an inertial standpoint. So that's why we're going to go with that. Probably going to go with a pair of 3-inch, one idler, one tensioner pulley, and I'm going to be going with an upgraded set of bearings on those things. So that's what we are waiting on right now. That'll be the next project that kicks off. And then from there, maybe going, might be setting the computer off. So let me bring you guys up to speed. So the fact of the matter is that, I am having a ball with this thing, but it's about time for this thing to at least get a transmission tune. It's middle of summer right now, and it's not like we're going to be setting any records anytime soon. And quite honestly, I think I've given the stock PCM thing its due. We're going to be out of warranty on this thing anyway here pretty soon, and from the looks of it, everything's holding together just fine. So, yeah, it'll basically be getting a tune, but more or less just a trans tune. Just kicking off right now with those plans. Let's see, T-Mopar saying, what up, B? Make sure I'm not missing anybody. Mopar is in. Y'all check out his channel. He's got something new. Something very near and dear to my heart. So y'all go check him out. Slash is saying, what up? Thanks for that power break. Oh, the power stop. Yeah, that was kind of a fun video to do. But yeah, the driving impressions are, well, you saw the video, you know what I'm talking about. Demonology checking in. Everybody say hello to Demonology. If you're on my channel, I know you're on his. Everybody say what's up to him. Mopar is saying, I think it's faster than the Z06 was stock. I've driven them and they are quick. The only downside to the Vipers is the way that they're geared. They really need a 354 gear as opposed to that 308 gear. Zephyr RD saying, what up, Professor Mason? Got the fist. I like it. What up, man? Delio saying, what up, D? Got the fist. I like it. T-Mopar saying, here we go. Say T-Mopar saying, I ran a 15.7 at 90 miles an hour down Brandon Meyer Speedway with a DA of 86.14. Jesus Christ. What are you flying? Are you delivering mail with that thing? In his Jeep Grand Cherokee, no tune yet, coming Friday. Dude, 15.7 at that DA. That's crazy, man. That's fast. Good job, man. Mopar saying, and it turns, which I kind of like on a Dodge. Yeah. I'll tell you what, the newer, like Gen 3, 4, and 5, they actually handle, 4 and 5 handle far and away better than the Gen 2. Gen 2 Vipers were so bad about understeer, man. It was, well, I'll save you some horror stories, but yeah, for sure, man. You're going to love that car, man. I love those things. Sam saying, I had that starting issue fixed 2 weeks later, and it's rearing its head again. Oh, man. Check those injectors again, brother. Arnold's checking in saying, what up, B? What up, Arnold? Travis Lang, howdy. Howdy back at you, brother. Symphonic C8 in about 5 weeks. Ah, yeah, it is. I'm getting excited. You got any inside dirt on specifics of the vehicle? No, not necessarily inside dirt, but know quite a few people that are on the waiting list. One guy that I know, a buddy of mine, has had a penchant for having the first of whatever hits Texas, and he's been on the waiting list for that C8 since it was released, or at least since the sale date was released. So I'm going to try to get my hands on one pretty quickly, but I don't know. We'll see. There's that's kind of a wait and see type of a thing. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that like you would not believe. But no inside, aside from what they have already talked about, which was, oh damn, possibly a 4-valve, carryover supercharged stuff. Nothing really to write home about just yet. We're still waiting to find out about that 4-valve D8. Let's see. Oh, accidentally flubbed it. ET Racing. Hey, B, how did the rear wheel rub fix turn out? Did you end up doing spacers like Sean? No, I didn't have to do spacers. One thing, though, that didn't get on the video, if you're looking at, like, if this is the front of the inner fender, where I scooted on the backside, where I scooted the fender well out, I got plenty of room on the backside. One thing I did do is there's a kick in, like from my point of view, or from your point of view, it kicks out like that. That part of that inner fender well can potentially rub on the tire. Mine would on D-cell when the suspension geometry would step up a little bit. It would rub just a little bit. So I bent those little ears, if you want to call it that, I bent those in a little bit. Again, it's super easy plastic. You can almost crease it like a manila folder. It reacts very much the same. Just crease those back and it's doing great. But yeah, no rubbing, no nothing, no annoying, no self-clearancing, none of that. By the way, I'm hoping you guys got a kick out of that video. The plan with that video was to try to give as good of a video as I could, but also give the worst possible information that I could, like spinny, cutty thing and pokey stabby and all that. Anyway, hope y'all had fun with that video, but hopefully it was as informative as it was mildly entertaining. But no, that was a fun one to do, and I know that comes up a lot with the Challengers. By the way, no rubbing issue on the passenger side. Typically on the Challengers, it's on the driver's side. It's just the way that everything kind of works out with those cars. Sam's hollering out at Demonology. Arnold's saying, thoughts on a ported 392 manifold? I had it on my last build with full bolt-on cam, but I never did a comparison from stock versus ported, so I don't know if I actually gained from any benefits. Arnold's also asked, my baseline was about 410 horse, 390 torque, which is very common. And after full bolt-ons cam, ported manifold, I made 500 and 470 on 93. I just don't know if the manifold gave me any power between all the mods. So here's the thing. Yeah, it can, provided the manifold is ported correctly. Whenever I port the manifolds, the runners are pretty easy, but you can only go into the runner about that far. You know, as far as your rat tail is going to go, you can get some of you can blend a lot of the hard edges out of the runners. And it takes a good amount of time. And you got to be patient and just take your time. Don't try to force the tool in there, and you can get a pretty good looking port when you're all said and done. Where the rubber meets the road, where the money's really made on that intake manifold is the throat and the contouring. Whenever I port an intake manifold, I'm on that manifold for, well, depending on the condition of the manifold, because they're all a little bit different, I'm typically average about 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours on that manifold. So one of them was horrific, and that's the one that was actually on Shalandra. And when I put that one on the car to just prove that I could take the absolute worst looking, it should have been a factory reject manifold, and it actually made power. So yeah, if it's done the right way, you can, but just going in and cleaning up the runners can actually help too. But again, it's going to depend on the shape of the manifold as it's received from the factory. If it's in good shape and it's clean, you won't get as much of a gain. But if your car put down 410 I don't know what type of dyno you were on, it looks like you ended up making 500, which looks like Like, for example, my car put down 410, 415 on a Mustang dyno. And then when it was all said and done, I think the best I put down was like 430. But, 500 of the rear wheels, looks like a dyno jet number. It might be on a Mustang dyno. I know a lot of the cam cars, depends on your correction factor and all of that. If you're in that range, though, you're in good shape. But again, with the cam, the cam, with the overlap of the cam, you'll kind of mitigate that intake a little bit, the porting of the intake, but a stock cam car, you can pick up actually a little bit with that ported intake. Mainly because the intake charge is so hard because you got 121 degree lobe separation angle. But I'll tell you what, it definitely helps. But just throwing a throttle body on a regular ported manifold, it's not going to do any good, because if the throat's not contoured enough, you just won't get the flow. You just won't be able to take advantage of it. Zephyr RD saying, turbo big kitty, lay it on me. Yeah, nah. No turbos for this thing. Frankie's saying, what up, Brian? What up, Frankie? Sam saying, is it a good idea to use Junkyard 5.7 Gen 3? Yeah, you're not going to find any of them with any real issues, typically. Especially if it's an older one. Those things are pretty much bomb-proof. I've seen quite a few of those go for a long time. The only downside to them, while I say that, some of them did run into issues with valve seats, but yeah, for the most part, you're going to be in pretty good shape. So you're taking the same risk with that engine as you're going to take with any engine. Don't let anybody fool you. They're all susceptible to the same issues. Frankie's saying 13 in chat, 5 likes. Hit that like button, guys. Absolutely. Mopar is saying Ennis is doing a night session on the 15th. If I haven't heard, I didn't know about that. I'll have to look into that, man. You bringing that fiber out there, bro? Sam's asking, do you know of any difference in a truck 5.7 versus a car 5.7? Well, the intake manifolds are different for sure. The calibration in the ECU is different. But aside from that, there's really no difference that I'm aware of between the two. I believe the cam is the same. All the rest of the internals is going to be the same. So that's really it. I mean, the car does not have a, if you're talking about the newer ones, the car doesn't have a variable runner intake where the truck does. That's where the truck gets a little bit of the power from, but that's really about it. I mean, and realistically, they both make about the same power to the rear wheels anyway. Slash is asking, can I cross a Dodge Caliber SRT4? Oh, he said, I was going to say maybe, it looks like he said, I came across a Dodge Caliber SRT4 the other day and could not pull ahead of him in my 90 Charger. Did he have something in there besides stock? He said, it's because I'm too heavy. The Caliber SRT4 is actually not slow. That little car is pretty quick for what it is. But chances are he had a little bit done to that car. But yeah, those things are actually no joke. And for the uninitiated, they can get spooked a little bit by those things. I've had a lot of fun with in my case, it was the SRT4, the regular SRT4, the old neon version of that. But yeah, they run good, man, for sure. The car was on a Mustang dyno with weather correction. Beautiful, man. I love it. That's some strong numbers with that car. You need to get that thing to a drag strip, put it on a drag pack, and go out and break some hearts of that thing. Mopar saying, do you know Calvo Motorsport seriously considering a turbo system on the Viper for half-mile use, which is what the car is going to be devoted to? I've heard of them, but I don't know them personally. I would say they're probably pretty good with them. Again, with the Viper, it's one of those things where you just don't want to get too greedy with them, but they don't do bad on boost and tons of torque. Main thing with that is getting the car up and rolling. When you got that much displacement, it's going to want to get freaky. A little bit of an adjustment on the suspension too might do you some good as far as trying to plant the power on that thing. Let's see. But no, I have heard of them though, for sure. Sorry about that. Sophonics, how much horsepower can you squeeze out of an LS3 with full bolt-ons and not going forced induction? and having a streetable cam. Well, you know, streetable is a little bit subjective, but on the Mustang down over at Pikes, I mean, typically, you know, 470, 480 is a good, solid number, a fairly healthy cam. Stock intake, so you still have some torque down low. That's about the most I've seen anyway out of an LS3 that you would consider to be streetable. So somewhere in that range, and on a dyno jet, you'd be looking at, you know, 520-ish to the rear wheels. It's kind of the going rate for those engines. Let's see, Molten Mopars. Viper will be there, and we will be tuning the Vet after mods. Very nice. Let's see what you guys can get out of that Vet. Love the Z06, by the way. Beautiful car. It's just not a Viper. Jason Nelson, what are your thoughts on a cam swap headers imported intake claiming 530 rear wheel horsepower? I'm assuming you're talking about a 392, and that would be bold, to say the least. Not saying it's impossible, but that would be, I mean, it just depends on the cam. So I put a cam together that actually makes a significant difference in power. I think the power difference was, that car started off at 397 to the rear wheel stock, and I want to say that we ended up at, on the Mustang dyno, and by the way, the one over, I'm sorry, it wasn't on the Mustang dyno, it was on a dyno comp, I believe is what it was on. I think it made 397 or 407, and I want to say it ended up at like 515 to the rear wheels on a dyno comp. But that cam was just kind of a dog down low. In fact, the guy he didn't care. He just wanted a number. We gave him a package that made a number, and he hated the car because it was a turn down low. It's like, dude, you know, it's just like any other engine. If you want power up on the big end of the curve, you got to sacrifice down low. Delio's asking, what direction do you predict FCA is going in the future for the Challenger or the Hellcat platform? You know, they're still going to rework the LX platform. It's supposed to be a little bit lighter, but that's kind of a topic on its own. I mean, I could probably do an entire video on that, but to really try to boil it down to its component parts, look, you know, it's the platform's getting a little long in the tooth, and it wasn't like it was fresh as a daisy when it was first released anyway. What with it being more or less a revised version of the, you know, the E5, you know, the E63 platform, you know, E55, basically E-Series Mercedes-Benz. So, you know, what are they going to do? They're supposed to revise it, pull a couple $100 out of it. We'll see what ends up happening, but that's kind of the direction that it would be. It's looking like it's going to go. Look for a 2022 release year-ish, somewhere in that range, but they need to do something pretty quickly. And you know, not for nothing, I mean, when the Hellcat was originally released, 2015, that was the big facelift. But I mean, excuse me, hell, it had been out for what, 8 years prior to that. You know, 8 total model years, 08 to well, 7, 08 to 14, prior to the 15 model year. So it's kind of getting due for that look. But for me, I'm having, and I really need to do a video on that. In fact, it's kind of slated to go this direction, but I'm having a hard time getting worked up over anything else that Mopar is going to release, mainly because there's not enough pomp and circumstance, in my opinion anyway, to, you know, for the outgoing cars. I mean, the 1320, that was a perfect opportunity to swan song the LX platform, and they didn't. So, you know, you got the Demon, yeah, that's great, but for me, naturally aspirated Hemi, aluminum block, you know, something that really screams old school Mopar, naturally aspirated is really, for me, the best way to go about that, and we don't have that yet. And I don't know. I got to do a video on that because I can sit here and just completely blow 2 hours on just that one topic alone. But again, I'm not sure really what the idea is in terms of styling, and you know, if they're going to keep the Hellcat platform, move to a different engine platform altogether. That was a debate that came up, but the word on the street right now is that power plants are going to stay where they are, which is great, but it's also not great because there's just no evolution of the breed, so to speak. And don't get me wrong, Red Eye, Demon, they're great. It is an upgraded supercharger. Internals are upgraded. There are some cool things going on with the fuel system with the twin 450s. Yes, that is all good news. That's all great, especially if you want to kind of turn it up a little bit. But, there's not a real big, stock for stock, there's not a huge performance delta there, even with the extra 100 horsepower. And really, we need to see something a little bit different coming from Mopar here relatively soon, so that they can stay on top of, that mountain that they've created, so to speak, with the Hellcat and with the Scat Packs. Let's see. Let's skip through here real quick. I'm trying to get to some folks here. Arnold's saying, yeah, it looks like Dyno Jet numbers. I don't know, man. I've seen Dyno Pack numbers up there. I've seen, so it's all good. Sam Grubble saying, I can't believe that the new 6.7 Cummins has forged rods from the factory. Well, you'd have to with 1,000 pound-feet of torque. Pretty sweet, though. Violent Emmy saying, evening, Mr. B. I like it. Got the shades on in the cold and frosty. I like that. Paul's asking, what all entails in your drag? Oh, he's asking, basically what is a drag pack, I'm guessing, or, what all is in a drag pack. Well, if you're talking about drag pack wheels and tires, I'm running Dark Stars 9.5 rears, 305 45 17s in the back. I'm running the Mickey Thompson 18x5, running the Dark Star 18x5s with the Mickey Thompson 28x6 radials up front. A little heavier than the bias ply, but they're a lot more stable. Sam Grable saying, I think there is a market for a Shaker Hellcat. If they can make it work, there might be. But the snorkels look pretty cool. Leonard saying, good evening, Mr. B. Mr. Mopar, did I understand you correctly that long tube headers on a stock Hellcat engine don't really do much? They really don't do much. I can give you the tale of two Hellcats real quickly. So, you guys know Racer X. His Charger is still running the stock manifolds, mid 9-second car. Had another car in the shop. Basically, it was a clone of Paul's car. On the dyno, both cars made identical power. So if you're talking about dyno numbers, there was no difference. Both of them both of them were, over 800 horsepower on a Mustang dyno, which is a big number. It's about 1,000 horsepower to the flywheel. There wasn't any difference there. Where long tube headers can help is partial throttle, but these are both stock cam cars, and although the Hellcat does have a longer duration on the exhaust side, there's still, it's cracking the valve open a little bit earlier. So not a lot on the scavenge side. It's just one of those things where the long tubes just really don't show a gain on a dyno. They don't show it at the drag strip. And in driving both cars, I couldn't tell the difference between the two. So that gives you an idea, hopefully, about long tubes. I would never say don't put them on the car. I would never say anything like that. But, if you're doing something like that, do it because you are doing other modifications and it's a supporting mod. Or if you just like the sound, I say go for it in that respect. Molten Mopars, do you think the Viper will be back? Yes, it will be back, but not the way that it looks now. And that's a bummer, but in talking to the marketing guys, again, now we're talking, it's at this point going back 3 years at Mecum, talking with some of the marketing folks at FCA, in particular, the guy that was head of marketing for SRT. In talking to him, it's one of those situations where the Viper's got to go through a transformation where it is a viable brand in and of itself, the way that Corvette is, which means it's got to appeal not only from a pricing standpoint, but from a sex demographic. Males and females need to be able to jump in the thing and not feel intimidated by it. It's got to be able to have basically it's got to be able to be marketable and sellable as a brand all its own. And the way that it sat, it wasn't that. It was a brand in and of itself, so to speak, but that car had kind of run its course for FCA. Look to see the V10 go away, and look to see some different versions of the existing Hemi fit between the frame rails of that car. The sad thing about it is they kind of lost sight of where that car needed to be in terms of its competition, which is the Corvette. And say what you want about, how, Porsches cost more, and, which was kind of it's kind of a side-eye competition for that car. It never really was. I mean, if you live in the North American market, or really anywhere on the planet, I don't know why I'm singling out North American market, but it was directly associated with the Corvette. And back in the early 2000s in SCCA racing, it was always Viper versus Corvette, with them trading off championships and race wins. So, if it's going to be a viable vehicle in the marketplace, it has to be able to compete directly with Corvette, and it never did, and that's what basically led to its demise. Symphonic saying, I'm most excited for the C8 After Effects. When all the C7 owners trade their cars in, I can maybe pick up a C7 Grand Sport or Z06 on the cheap. That will always be an awesome car, but we'll see. I mean, let's take a look. Let's see what that C8's all about first, because from my understanding, that C8 is going to be pretty freaking sweet. So, but yeah, you'll probably be able to get Grand Sports for a song once that thing comes out. Rhoda's saying, Leonard, long tubes are made to scavenge. The Hellcat is forced induction, doesn't need scavenging. That's not 100. I mean, you still need some scavenging, and realistically, again, in this scenario, you also have to remember, so think of it like this. 392s really don't benefit from it. They've got a super wide lobe separation angle, lots of lift, but not much duration. So there's literally just no real time for scavenging, except for at lower RPMs, where you will actually see a jump in torque. Pretty common, but it's rare to see any real jump in horsepower that's not going to be just more or less associated with the tune. Hellcat, pretty much the same way. You can get some scavenging with the long tubes. The downside to that is when you scavenge on a forced induction car, especially one with a positive displacement supercharger, you lose boost. Now, conventional wisdom would tell you, well, yeah, but you maintain the same power with less boost. That's a good thing. That's not necessarily a good thing. I mean, you're going to lose cylinder pressure, which means you do lose power. Some guys have even said the car felt a little bit more sluggish. You can run a little bit more timing and try to recapture some of that, but I don't know. Between driving the two cars, I literally couldn't tell you the difference between the two, and both of them ran like just screamed, so that was a good thing. Hang on, just a second. Sam saying SRT Pacifica. Why not? Let's see. Oh, Mopar saying it. Sam, they're a powder Ford still. Yep, they work great up until you push one too many PSI. They don't bend very often. They usually break and take lots of parts with them when they do. Yes, they do. Especially when they snap and that powdered metal rod turns into a freaking brush off leg. Speed Freak saying, hey B, what's a good exhaust upgrade for a stock Hellcat? Looking to have a race car sound that's not raspy while keeping the cats. Dude. Man, I'll tell you something. No, man, kill the resonators. You can do a mid-muffler delete. The problem is they start getting real raspy and kind of shrill sounding once you start removing too many of the resonators in there. Mustang Lab 302, I'd rather be walking. Okay. Poser saying, have you seen the trailer for the upcoming movie Ford versus Ferrari? Good to see a new car movie coming out. I have. Kristen Bale and, what is it Matt Damon's in that one? Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. Hey, show me Mopar. I like it. Thank you. A great summer of such sort of 16 Challenger Scat, Taser reported intake, fast man, Hellcat, airbox, drag pack. The B Mason formula, better believe it, got the flex up. Yeah, no, for sure, man. That, I mean, to be honest with you guys, I mean, that's basically your 11-second package starter kit. Hang on just a second. I got to get into another power cable. This power cable is acting a fool. Time out. Hang on. Let me get the one out of my car. This one typically doesn't flake out. I don't know what it is with this power cable, but it's been giving me a fit. You guys ever run into that? I mean, it's a power cable. How did it go bad? That didn't even make sense, right? Piece of crap. Thank you very much, though, man. I appreciate that. Let's see. Delio's asking, how do you think the new 2020 GT5 is going to stack up stock for stock against the Hellcat Red Eye? Man, I'll tell you something. It's not. Okay, so no matter what the metric is that you're aiming for with that setup, the GT500 is what I'm talking about. The reality is that it's hard for me really to get excited about the GT500 because it doesn't have a 6-speed manual. It doesn't have a traditional slush box automatic, which would have been brilliant for drag racing with that car. I don't know. I can't imagine the Mustang being slow, but man, I gotta tell you guys something. I'm not exactly. I don't have very high hopes for that car. It's gonna have to prove itself to me. I wish that it would have been available with a 6-speed manual, but unfortunately, they haven't figured out a way to make that work and survive in their cars. I mean, it's not like the TR6060 isn't just hanging out there, right? My God, I mean. Throw the 6060 in it, call it good. Give it a real life, real genuine freaking automatic, and it'd be a fantastic car. They're really missing the boat with that thing. So on the street, it's going to be a very tight race, but a stripped down Red Eye is going to give that GT500 really all that it can handle. And you start getting into the lightweight versions of the GT500. You might see some differences there. Guys, honestly, I don't see that GT500 blowing anybody's hair back. Sorry, it's just my personal opinion walking into this. And Ford hasn't given us any real reason to think otherwise. And you guys know how much of I love GT500s, and I'm not really hollering out sour grapes here. It's just I see the direction that they're taking that car and the potential cost of the thing. You're going to have this obscene amount of dealer markup on that car. The added tag is going to be ridiculous, and I don't know, it's kind of leaving a bad taste in my mouth at this point. Boss Hog is asking, is this Mr. Clean? No, I am not, but thank you for the compliment. Leonard's, thank you for your answer, sir. Thank you for hanging out. Boss Hog's asking, does double penetration hurt? I don't know, ask your dad. Show me Mopar. God, I like it. Saying hunting mid-11s at the track and doing some road course events. I like it. Going to be buried with this car. Strut towers, braces, front and rear, coils are next. The car is stock, no tune. Blows my mind. I like it. Very nice. Yeah, that's going to be a great performing car, man. You're going to have a ball with that. I know at Motorsports Ranch, there's some guys that are running Hellcats, SRT, Scat Pack, stuff like that. They're actually doing really well. People that say that these cars can't handle and can't hold their own on a closed circuit, man, they do. And the funny thing is just like any other platform, once you get used to the platform, you get an understanding of its idiosyncrasies, you can get them around a closed circuit just fine. Let's see. Paul's asking, Mr. B, would you put the Demon Killer springs on? Do you know anything with the front, or do you do anything with the front sway bar? No, I leave the front sway bar in. As far as the Demon Killer springs, really at this power level, I don't see them being much of a benefit. If I were running a 15-inch wheel conversion, or if I were just making more power in general, I would say that they might help, but they only help if you are having a hard time getting the car to hook up. And I don't at this power level, and most of them really don't. You start getting into the 800 horsepower to the rear wheel, 850 to the rear wheel, somewhere in that range, that's when they'll actually start to help you get that weight transferred. But, you know, really that, along with some, you know, weight reduction mods, can help you quite a bit. What Mopar is saying, that's my thoughts on the Viper too. I also noticed I'm seeing few maps in the ECU that would normally be associated with turbo on specific, naming a twin turbo system. Yeah. It's been a while since actually, which makes me think it's coming out with twins possibly. Don't be surprised if you see forced induction, V8, something, and a lot of those, a lot of those folks, by the way, that I was talking to, especially the guy with FCA, it's not just FCA thinking this. I mean, the car went through test group after test group, talking to guys that came in and looked at Vipers but bought the Vet, or looking at, asking the question of what would make you choose a Vet over a Viper. And these are guys that are spending money. It's also guys that had owned Vipers in the past. They're asking, well, you've owned them in the past. Have you ever thought about trading up? And a lot of times the answer is no. I mean, I've already did that dance, and there's nothing there to get me back into that mode. So, that kind of leads me to another point in the Vipers. A lot of folks basically took that car as, more or less, they just didn't do anything with it other than upgrade the face a little bit, power, to somebody that doesn't know what they're looking at. It's still a Viper, but that's kind of the point. It just didn't evolve the way that a lot of Viper owners that would normally trade up into a new Viper, a lot of them, unfortunately for Dodge, traded up to a Z06. Delio, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Damn, multiple Mopars, thank you very much. PCM Unlock Fun, I love it. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's coming soon, guys. In fact, it may be coming sooner than you think. Well, it's summertime, so it's that time to get after. But thank you all very much. I don't know why I'm not getting notifications on these, but thank you guys very much, man. I truly appreciate that. Delio Multiple, man, thank you so very much for the contribution to the cause, man. I really do appreciate that. Very much appreciated. Very humbling, too. Thank you, guys. Brian is asking, general question, what do you think makes the ultimate burnout? That's a fun question. Well, if you're on the street, first of all, it's got to be a rolling burnout. A static burnout is something you do at the drag strip, and it's a purpose. There's a reason behind it. But on the street, you've got to get wheel speed up and get it moving very quickly. I want to see the car go from sitting to that nice, real pretty fan out of the smoke underneath it. That only comes with wheel speed. And then slowly coming off the brake, let the car just start rolling back off the throttle, and keep RPM at about 5,000 RPM. Let the car start to collect some speed, and then slowly start rolling into the throttle as the car starts to collect traction and starts to gather momentum. Keep your foot kind of slowly creeping in and maintain that RPM, and that is what makes for the best looking rolling burnout ever. Thanks again, guys. I appreciate the contributions to the cause. Again, I don't know why I'm not getting notifications. That's weird. Codename is asking, have you heard that Texas Speed is making Hemi cams? What are your thoughts? They're not bad. Anything Texas Speed does is not going to suck. There are a couple of things I would maybe do different with their cams myself, but cams, tuning, you get two cam guys in a room, and you could agree on everything else under the planet, and there's going to be a fist fight. Same with tuning. The reality is there's so many different ways to get to the same end. So listen, believe me when I tell you, their cams are going to be good. Ronan's saying, thank you for that clarification. Absolutely. Ronan's asking, running a 426 heads cam 6.1 ported manifold, Thoughts on 370 and 29.5-inch tall tire or 309 and 28-inch tall tire? Ah, man. Okay, so if you're running on that 6.1, I would, if it's a nag one, 370 gear is good, man, but you got to remember, you got to run a gate drag, and that's going to be pricey. 309, well, same either way. 309 is going to be less expensive. If it's my car and it's a nag one, I'm going with a 370 gear with that, just because it's going to make the car a riot to drive. You're not running nitrous, it's still naturally aspirated. 370 with those transmission ratios is really going to wake the car up. I think it's going to give you the feel that you're looking for. Again, you're going to pay for it, but I think it's going to be well worth it in the long run. Poser's asking, do you plan on getting Demon or Demon type rear springs for Revlon in the future? Not really, because the car is doing great the way that it's sitting at the power level that it's at. And that's a good thing. I mean, I cannot complain about how this car gets out of the hole. You know, if we end up looking at pulleys, E85, hit a nitrous, something like that, then yeah, I would go with a Demon style setup, but I just don't know that we're going to get there with this car. I really like this car a lot. It's my favorite car that I've ever owned, and there's certain pitfalls that I've found with these cars that I don't want to find myself falling into. So in that respect, I will be more than happy to enjoy the fruits of the labors of the fellas that will spend their money on their cars, but I happen to know kind of how that story ends before it starts, and we're going to kind of keep it fairly simple and see how deep we can get this car on just the stock pulleys for now. Let's see, Sam's asking, the handshaker will be missed in the new trucks. Handshaker, man, I'm missing it. We're going to say cam is spec for future forced induction. I like that. Make sure you focus on the exhaust side. Mopars, the G56 couldn't take the power behind the new Cummins. That's for sure. When I used to tune diesel, you'd think the auto fail more, but it's usually the first ones to give up are the G56 clutches in fifth gear. I can see that for sure. Freaking love diesels. The more, man, I wouldn't mind doing a diesel build. That'd be a lot of fun. Sam's saying, I'm thinking doing compounds in a good tune on my 2015, but once you start modding something, it's hard to stop. Better believe that. Ronan's asking A8, but running a 6.1 manifold. Sorry, I wasn't clear. It's a 16. So 16 with an A8, stay with a 309. The 370 is just going to be a little bit much. I'm not sure you're going to see much of a benefit with that, mainly because you're going to be blowing through first gear like that with a 370. I probably I don't know if I would spend the money on that. 309 is actually working out really well for a lot of guys. Mopar saying, I've been there and talking to Sam. Yeah, multiple would. Man, he's got a Bob diesel that I would love to take for a spin. I don't know, man. I'm getting this kind of itch to do a diesel build for some reason right now. I think it might just be a passing fancy, but I do like it. Poser's asking, Street Hellcat stock rims, Nitto, Tri 5Rs, 275 or 305 for the rears. Man, I go 305s just for the look, but the reality is that the 275 is going to have a better looking contact patch. But I get the aesthetic of the 305s. I ran 275 Mickey Thompsons on the back of my my SRT in the stock size, and it ran real well. Let's see. Show me Mopar. Yes or no? Have watched and studied all your stuff. Is Going Catless going to get me those couple of tents I'm chasing? If just to chase a number and go back to cats when I get the number from the scat. So, yes and no. So, where you will get a benefit from killing the cats on these cars is to kill the catalytic converter overtemp protection that's in the ECU. That's really the only place where you're going to gain anything, and really it's you might be looking at a tenth at the tail end of the track on those cars. basically what ends up happening is the inferred temperature gets above 1700 and change degrees. The car starts throwing a bunch of fuel at it to basically cool the catalytic converters down. And with the cat's gone, you can kill the cat converter over temp, and it just maintains a consistent AFR all the way down the drag strip. AFR can get as rich as 10.1 on the most rich side once it goes into cat over temp. So yeah, you'll kill a little bit of power there, but I wouldn't go so far to say you'll pick up 2/10. You might be able to reel in about 1/10, and but you know, a lot of that's going to have to do with altitude and everything else that you're running in as well. So without giving you too much of a specific answer, I'll just kind of blanket statement and say you'll pick up some, but you're really picking up more consistency than anything else. Zephyr's asking, do you do work on the 6.1 manifold? Run the 6.1 manifold run an intake manifold for the 6.1 that has been extrude honed. That's really the way to get the most out of that intake. Just a regular port is, I don't think, adequate really for those intake manifolds. I think if you were to send one to extrude hone, you get a much better result, and I certainly could not do better than extrude honing. Sam Gray, well, Mopar, I am well aware of the problems with the factory G56, but it can always be built, but I still prefer the MG56. Running saying, thank you, sir. Got it. Zephyr R&D, to get a real solid partial throttle tune, do you need it on a dyno, or can you remote tune, or can a remote tune work just as well? Remote tune can work just as well. You don't actually have to have it on the dyno, but it helps just because there's so many little nuanced things that you want to try to do to repeat, and it just takes a lot less time. I mean, so when I tuned my Lightning, I did all of my tuning on the street, which obviously is the best way to do it, technically. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the vehicle is under a dynamic load, wind resistance, everything else, but really for what you're going to be working with, especially for partial throttle, the whole wind resistance thing really isn't going to come into play too much, especially if your speed's under 50. But it is still a dynamic load. To have it on a load-bearing dyno and have that dyno loaded fairly heavily for the partial throttle tuning that you're doing, that's the most important thing. And the cool thing is when you do load testing with a Mustang dyno, you can tell the dyno just don't let the car go over or don't let the engine spin more than 3,500 RPM, or don't let it go over 35 miles an hour. Roll the throttle, and it doesn't matter how much power the car makes. When you do that load testing, it's in fact on a Hellcat, it's spooky sounding because the thing is screaming, blower's going nuts, and it's just sitting there at 3,500 RPM or 4,500 RPM, whatever. And what you can do is you can roll into the throttle through the entire throttle suite and check AFR, everything else, and you'll actually be putting it under way more load than you can ever put it on the street. So, for those that will argue that street tuning is better, it's better, but it's not. It's better in some respects and not as good in others. And when it comes to partial throttle, low speed spark knock is what blows motors up more than wide open throttle stuff. So yeah, it's really good. You can do it on the street. It's a good way to do it. It's far better on a Mustang dyno, maxed out on the load for partial throttle stuff. Let's see. Bear with me just 1 second, fellas. Hang on. Oh, sorry about that. Sam's asking, I can see them bringing back the stick and the truck if FCA buys Renault, or possibly they might go with the Eaton 7. I'm missing out on that one, Sam. Help me out, brother. Codename Scat saying, thanks, brother. Thank you. Mopar, is that Sam? When I was racing G56 diesels, I killed 5 G56s in one race. We killed 3 every run. These were built units with a full Gorilla build. I used to work for a shop that built G56s. That's pretty cool. I like that. One race, 5 different rounds. Damn. CJ saying, I need a Dodge Viper. We all need Dodge Vipers. It's good to have them in your life. Cristobal saying, hey man, how's it going on the 5.7 Challengers? Are the cats pretty restrictive? Would it be worth putting catless mid-pipes on the stock cast iron manifolds? Not really. Not unless you are specifically tuned to have the cats removed. It just is not going to do you a whole lot of good. The cats flow pretty well. As a matter of fact, I still have stock cats on my Hellcat. Doesn't seem to bother that thing too much. So, it's one of those things. And I had stock cats on my 392, and aside from being a little bit more, consistent on the drag strip, that was really the only difference that it made on the car, aside from killing cat overtemp, which did pick up a little bit. Well, Mopar saying, well, guys, I'm out. I'll holler at you soon, B. Mesa. Hey, man, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you hanging out, brother. Thank you very much for the contribution to the cause as well. Very well appreciated. Again, I don't know why I'm not getting notifications on that kind of stuff. So that's kind of weird. Paul's asking, B, do you ever put race gas in? Yes, I do. So here's what I found with my car on race gas. It does not like straight 104 at all. Not cool with it. Well, I say it doesn't like it. There's no difference in my car between 93 octane and straight 104. What my car does seem to like, though, is 100 octane, and it really likes a very conservative blend of, say, if I'm running 104, it'd be like 1 gallon of 104 to 5 gallons of 93, or just straight 100. The car seems to be cool with that too, but just a little bit to kick the octane up just a few points, say to go from 93 to 97, or just run straight 100. That's typically where the car is fairly happy, but I haven't really seen a huge difference between 93 and race gas. So in my car, it's very density altitude dependent on how the thing runs anyway. But in back-to-back testing, about the only thing that race gas helped with was on the big end of the track, and I'd pick up maybe a mile an hour on the big end of the track. So not a huge difference, but still a difference nonetheless. Let's see. Hoken is asking, is there any conceivable benefit of going with a centrifugal supercharger as opposed to something like a Whipple / basically a Roots positive displacement blower? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of benefits to going with a centrifugal supercharger. It all depends on what you're looking to do with that particular vehicle. Things to consider. Centrifugal superchargers have lower parasitic losses, less inertia loss. So in that respect, if you're spending a lot of time at high RPM, you're going to want a unit that is more efficient at high RPM and has, obviously less parasitic loss on the big end, is going to translate into more rear wheel horsepower per any pound of boost. Packaging could come into play, although typically a root style or positive displacement supercharger is going to be easier to package, but weight is another issue because they are significantly heavier, the positive displacement is. So again, it all depends on what you're looking to do. If you're putting a car together that you're going to be doing a lot of drag racing with, centrifugal supercharger can help, but the root style supercharger will help get you out of the hole a lot easier, and for the most part, in a typical street setup. If you're on an airfield somewhere and you're running the thing at high RPM for a long period of time, centrifugal will be the way to go with that. You're going to make better power up top, and it'll generate less heat in general. So each forced induction method has its place. It just depends on what you're going for. Obviously, turbos are going to be the most efficient no matter which direction you choose. But again, they all have to, it has to be basically combination specific, so to speak. Chris is asking, so would doing just a set of JBA shorties yield much of a gain with leaving the stock cats? On a 570, anything is better than the stock manifold. So yes, in that respect, it'll certainly help you. On a 392, no, not really. Not too much. I will say this, BBK makes a set of 1 7/8 shorties that on one particular 392, not mine unfortunately, but on Chris's Charger, thing actually picked up some decent power on that car. I want to say I think JBA might be making the same type of a set for the Hellcat. So again, there are some areas where you can pick up a little bit, but Yeah, to be honest with you guys, I mean, it's unless you've got a 5.7, it's going to be pretty difficult to improve upon what the factory's giving you. I'm not saying that there is not an improvement, but it's not the type of improvement that you might expect for the amount of money you're about to drop on it. Let's see. Sam Gray was saying, I really wish that FCA would turbo the 3.6. If they would build the bottom end of that 3.6 to be able to account for any forced induction, I think it would be pretty cool. At least it would be something slightly different. I'd actually like to see them do something that would give it a little bit different type of a flavor. You know, I'd like to see inline 6 with a big turbo. You know, like the Aussie, the Barra 4-liter inline 6. I'd like to see something cool, something a little bit different. Inline 6s have a rich history in automotive and in performance worlds. You know, something along those lines would be kind of cool too. I don't know. I'm kind of a fan of just the oddball stuff and things that are a little bit different. So now everybody's got a turbo V6. I don't know. I don't think, except for rotaries, I think it'd be kind of cool if they just did something different or something kind of cool. I think at one point they were talking about an inline 6 for the trucks, which I would be very interested in. Let's see, bunch of constant is DZ8 saying, hi, writing from Europe. What do you think future of Chrysler will be? Man, well, you know, as far as the American style muscle cars go, at some point they're going to have to do some type of a redesign, something that's going to have to change there in terms of, well, just the generic flavor of the car. I mean, the breed's got to evolve. So, but what are they going to do? Man, I don't know. The thing is that you're not seeing a lot of small cars anymore. You're seeing a lot of these crossovers, and that's really where the money is. And you take a look at Ford and just get an idea for, you know, where the market is trending. But yeah, it'd be cool if FCA would, you know, kind of do their own thing, keep making big, strong American-style cars and trucks. Now, I think there's a market for that. There's a lot of folks that are nostalgic for that type of vehicle, and they're buying them up. Now, obviously, look at the sales numbers. The Challenger is doing very well, so is the Charger, especially when you compare it to the fact that, you know, they really don't have aside from the Durango and the Cherokee, they don't have like what you consider a full-size SUV floating around out there, which is kind of weird when you consider it. But, you know, it's just you know, something to compare with like the Yukon or, you know, Denali or something like that. They just don't have anything. And you would think that they would, but they don't. They're doing really well with what they're doing. I don't really see them changing too much, which is good on one hand, status quo and all, but I don't know, man. I'd like to see them do something a little bit cooler. Sam Grill was saying buying Renault. Yep, they are. Show me Mopar's. Got the tool, got the arm flex. I like it, Sam. Out, B, you got to be up early. Keep the rubber side down. Thank you, sir. Got the fist bump. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Sam is out. Brian saying, any thoughts on many automakers committed to all-electric and self-driving future for cars? Man, you know, yeah, that's a thing. You know, it's kind of the trend right now. Self-driving, all-electric. You know, where does it start? Where does it stop? Look, I'm cool with all-electric. If that's the direction that it's going to go, battery technology really takes a big leap. You know, you're seeing that there can be a lot of performance out of those electric vehicles, so I'm cool with that. Self-driving stuff scares the living hell out of me, mainly because I don't trust a computer. I mean, we're getting so close to that anyway with the automatic braking systems, and you know, the nanny is getting a little bit too intrusive though with a lot of that stuff. But if that's the trend and that's the way that it's going, so be it. But I just, with all of that new technology, I'm not seeing any real gain in efficiency. I'm not seeing any real gain in safety per se. So aside from the driving aids, so for me, it's, I think that those resources could be better spent developing more efficient power plants, more efficient transmissions, just general higher efficiencies I don't know. To me, it's just, and not to mention for me, it's a little gimmicky. So I don't know. The technology is still in its infancy. I'm sure it's going to grow leaps and bounds, but I'm just not really on board with it, so to speak. Let's see. Zephyr's asking, with the new Turbo 4 in the Wrangler, how would you tune a stock engine that would have extremely smooth low-speed throttle control without the spike and throttle response from the turbo? Part 1, and have all the low-end torque. Well, I mean, you tune it just like anything else, and if there's a question about how the vehicle responds, you can always take care of that in driver command torque. So I'm guessing that's the direction that you're looking at. It's just all about how you're going to drive the thing. And keep in mind, the stock Jeep's got a very small turbo. You're really not going to, you don't consider that a turbocharged driving experience. That turbo is there to generate boost at low speeds to give efficient torque production. So, I mean, it's not like it's going to be laggy or anything like that. It's just, that's not the way that it's designed. Now, you go putting a bigger turbo on the thing, throw other parts at it, supporting mods, but, just specifically speaking about turbo in general, you go throwing a bigger turbo on the thing, then yeah, there's going to be some things you're going to have to do in terms of getting the thing to try to come into boost earlier, but there's only so much you can do about physics. Getting exhaust gases to pressurize the hot side of that thing to spool up a turbo that's larger than stock, you're just going to have more volume there to get the thing going, which means you're going to have more RPM, which is going to kill torque down low. So, stock turbo, driver command torque would be just fine. Bigger turbo, a little bit more of a challenge, and it's just going to be, what kind of compromises do you want to make at that point? Let's see. CS Paul saying 16 Scat Pack, fully built and Pro Charge, running about 627 to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno. Any advantage to doing a cam swap? Yes and no. It depends on what fuel you're running. If you plan on running E85, then it could be a good thing for you. You might need it actually to get rid of some of the mass that you're going to be pumping into that thing. You open up the duration a little bit on the exhaust side. So in that respect, yes, you can always run a little bit more duration, keeping in mind it's going to kill boost a little bit. So a little bit more duration, a little bit more aggressive pulley will work on the intake side, and then getting the exhaust gases out. A little bit more aggressive on the duration on the exhaust side with a slightly more aggressive load profile, which means you're going to absolutely need to have springs and push rods. So it's going to have to be part of a total package. But just throwing a cam in the thing, you'll probably pick up a little bit of boost, but you'll lose low speed response. Paul is asking, how is the AA battery doing? Is it good for cool down at the track? Talking about the Archangel. It's doing awesome. As a matter of fact, the last time we were at the drag strip, we made 5 or 6 passes with 5 cool down sessions, and at no time did I ever have the car go into battery shutdown mode. I think the lowest voltage I saw was 11.8, whereas the stock battery would die. I mean, the battery it'd go into low battery mode at 10 volts. This thing was holding, or 10.9, I think is what it's set to. This thing was running real solid, still 11.8 all the way through, and the car just lit off like normal. But the cool thing about it, no pun intended, I guess there, but I would actually shut off the cool down feature basically because the car was actually getting a little bit too cooled down. I'd have to get some heat into the cooling system. I'd get it down to like 140, and I don't like making hits any less than about 180, 170 at the very lowest. So at any rate, yeah, it's that Archangel battery is badass. Love it. Zephyr R&D saying 4 low rock crawling in the Wrangler, 0.5 mile to 5 miles an hour. realistically, at that point, you're going to probably want to have driver command torque have a little bit less. Instead of being a straight 45-degree angle, you probably want it a little bit curved and then come in at the top of the at the end of the pedal travel. And what that'll do is that will basically mute the power delivery a little bit, give you a little bit more control. That way when you're rolling into the throttle, you're bouncing around, your foot bounces around the throttle, you won't get a real jerky power delivery. It'll be a little bit muted because you're just not commanding as much torque. Tyler's saying, hey brother, just ordered Cook's headers and Catless Mids for my 392. What do you think the horsepower gain would be with or without a tune? Well, I mean, we've shown on the dyno that long tubes really don't give you any horsepower. They do pick up torque down low. I highly suggest a tune. You need to get the pulse timing correct with the O2s for those things. But aside from that, you'll see a little bit of torque down low. I wouldn't really bank on horsepower on the top end, again, just because of the stock cam, your lobe separation angle is very wide. But again, look for more torque than horsepower with those things. Paul is asking, saw you try to weigh your car the other day. What does it weigh? It actually, hold please, I'll tell you exactly what it weighs. It weighed at the cat scales 4,240 pounds without me in it, with about half a tank of gas, with the drag pack and the rear seat delete. And there you go. That's what it weighed. Which coincidentally I think is exactly what my SRT weighed in street trip. But all right, so I think that's got everybody's questions in, y'all. Oh, earthquake. But anyway, getting back to it, as far as this thing goes, yeah, we're going to be looking to probably do a little bit of something with the ECU soon. Again, mainly focusing on transmission tuning. Going to kick the transmission up a little bit. I'm going to take it from 6,000 RPM. I'll probably bump shift points up to about probably around 63.5 will be when I want to complete the shift. And excuse me, let's see, may play around a little bit with some rev limits to keep it from the yip in lower DAs. It's kind of a good problem to have, but once I started getting into like the 157, 158 range on 60 foot, yeah, predictive shifting got a little bit bent out of shape. Started getting that little bit of that 1-2 yip on the shift, so I'm going to do what's needed to take care of that. May play around with some drivability things with the transmission, but nothing too major, leaving all of the torque management in place. And again, really not mess with too much, probably riching it up just a little bit, but not by too much. Very mild, very tiny little minor changes, but really there just to maximize what the car's got going on for it with the stock boost level. So that's what we're up to on that. But well, guys, we are coming up on a little bit over an hour, and I got to wake up super early. Oh, hang on a second. Hatready's asking, do you think the used red-eye prices will come down as much as the initial Hellcats, or are they more rare? Good question. There's actually a secondary portion to that you may have hit on. So yeah, on one hand, they are more rare, but I don't think the prices are going to drop as much as the Hellcat. I think the Hellcat, with it being a bit more prolific, you're going to see the Hellcat prices obviously be lower than the red eye. But the thing about the red eye is that, do you buy a used red eye, or do you get a little bit newer used Hellcat? It all depends on what you're going to do with the car. And man, I mean, there's a lot of guys with low 10-second, high 9-second Hellcats with not that much done to them. So that budgeted amount for the car is going to have to take in some goals. If you want a red eye, just because it's a red eye, that's a perfectly good reason to buy one. I would say you're going to need to give it, though, probably a solid 2 to 3 years on the market before you're going to see any real savings. I mean, aside from buying getting one at a smoking deal on a dealership that they just can't seem to get rid of. Again, they're going to have to be out on the market for at least a few years before you're going to see any real, any real savings that would make sense to go out and actually shell out the money for them. But at any rate, guys, thank y'all very much. Again, we're just a little bit over an hour. I got to wake up crazy early in the morning, so y'all have a good one. And Paul's asking, what PSI do you run in the rear tires? On the street, I run 35s. The last time I was at the drag strip, because the DA was so crappy and the track prep was so good, believe it or not, I ran 29 PSI in those ET Street Rs and they dead hooked. So, but again, high DA, the car's making less power, good track prep, don't need as much of a deflated tire in that respect. The more pressure you run, the better she's going to run down the track. Paul's checking out. You guys have a great one. Again, thank y'all so very much for hanging out. I know this one's a little bit shorter than normal, but again, I got to wake up with the Amish, so I am going to go hit the sack. Y'all have a great one, and